What's up and welcome to Retcon Air, the plotline repair podcast. Now, I think that we've been doing a pretty decent job of breaking down the plotlines of books, movies, video games, TV shows, and everything else. We haven't, however, done a great job of breaking down ourselves. This is our 10th episode. We've been at this for 5 months now, and we've never really introduced ourselves to you. And we wanted to rectify that. So today, the Fantastic Fitches, both of them, are joining me for this very special episode of Retcon Air, the Retcon Air FAQ, where we get to pretty much just take you through the vision, the history, introduce ourselves a little bit, say some of our background, why we do this stuff, just to give you a better understanding about who we are and why we do what we do. So Bryar, Shelby, thank you for joining me on this very special episode of Retcon Air.
Hey man, it's good to be here once again, doing this whole distance thing on the interwebs.
Yeah, definitely happy to be back, from a distance, but we're here.
That's kind of what's cool about this is this is kind of how we've been running the show. Typically, I would be with either one, Shelby or Bryar, depending on the show. But because of this whole ridiculous pandemic, we had to do things a little bit different. So this is how we've been recording it. Me at my home office, Bryar and Shelby in the Mantic, which is where the show was kind of born and kind of started. And then together they did an episode. Did you do it there? Or what was your setup when you guys did that BioShock?
Literally right where we're sitting now.
Only we swapped sides. We were on opposite sides.
Wow.
Which is important to know.
You guys, this is going to be a lot more difficult than it should be. And then, everything else, typically, I just throw everything in a backpack and then go. So this is neat. We just really wanted to do something different. So not just a conventional episode, especially since this was our 10th one. And I just realized, why not? This is the perfect time. You've got the setup. I've got the setup. Let's go ahead and do a video-based version to just really just kind of get ourselves out there and introduce ourselves to our, 7, 8, 9, 10 people that get to watch this. So it's very nice to meet you. So if you're into that, let's get started by just covering some, different questions and stuff about kind of the show, the background, and stuff like that. So I wanted to start, if we were going to do this, with the main question that I've gotten since pitching this. And whenever I talk about the show, this is the question that I get. It's what the flip does retcon mean?
Fair question,
I mean, very understandable question.
So I have a question. Do people actually say what the flip?
No.
Oh, that's
Normally it starts with wait, what's a podcast again? And then they segue by going oh, I have a friend who has another podcast that they want to talk to you about when you're trying to talk about your podcast. So Brylander, what do you think retcon means when you're telling people about it?
I mean, it's kind of like a mulligan, like a do-over. It's a chance to change the story in a pretty fundamental way.
Yeah, I agree. Shelves?
Yeah, so I think we've talked about this, but for me, it means that since we love the heck out of a certain piece of work, whether that's a video game, a book, a movie, whatever, we have really strong opinions on it. And sometimes we'd maybe want to change one thing here or there to kind of make it better for ourselves, selfishly.
Yeah, so very selfishly. The work is fine. The work doesn't need us. The work got commissioned and paid for without our help whatsoever. And then we have the balls to go through and look at it and say we don't like it. But no, so I looked at the definitions. I wanted to go legitimate, definitions just to make sure that we were correct, to make sure that we were using it properly. And so from Merriam-Webster themselves, and then Comic Vine and a few other places, they all say the same thing. It's essentially a different take on a previously established story or concept, and that's all we do. All we do is we break down a already established property, book, movie, video game, TV show, Broadway show, whatever, and then we break it down, explain everything that happened in it that we thought is prevalent, and then we just give our own take on what we might do differently. And that's it. So I think we're sticking true to the definition of what retcon is. Do you guys agree, disagree?
I agree.
All right. So number 2, how did we get this whole retcon party started? Bryar, you want to kick off again?
So I remember middle to tail end of last year, you sent me and then our buddy Cam a message pitching this idea. And I remember I was on board for it, but I grilled you pretty relentlessly for an hour about just the time frame and your idea, the fundamentals of it, because at the time, and to a lesser extent even now, your schedule was just always so full. So my biggest concern was, do you have time to do this? Because I don't want to get this thing going just to find out in a month that we don't have the time to keep it rolling. So, but I mean, you had an answer and a legit plan for all of my concerns. So I was all right, fuck it, let's do this.
That's what was kind of cool about it for me was I got pushback from both. So I had 2 really good friends of mine that I talked to almost every single day, Bryar and Cameron. And I got pushed back from both of them pretty aggressively, pretty heavily. And the thing that was really cool about that is I didn't take it personally. I was like, no, these are the exact questions that somebody should ask me. And I would hope that, if you have a friend that's thinking about doing a podcast or starting any project, that you would ask them these kind of questions, like, what's your bandwidth like? You're constantly exhausted. Like, do you have time to take this on? And the thing that was cool about that was I was able to really think about, like, yes, this is why it's a yes. This is why I want it to be a podcast, not like a video series kind of thing. So this is a very special thing because typically I didn't want to do video whatsoever. But I think it was really important for me to go through that kind of trial of you and Cameron pushing so hard and like, have you really, really, really thought about all your roadblocks? And for me to be able to go like, yeah, I really have. And this is my plan. And this is what I was thinking about, like how to overcome all that stuff. So it was cool. So it was neat. So I know that people typically don't like conflict or whatever, but I think that was really important. So I really thank you and I thank Cam for pushing back so hard and making me really.
I was legit impressed by I think it was like an hour later you came at me with like a full schedule breakdown of like how you wanted to do it, the time frame you wanted everything to happen in, and like everything. I think that was really the point, like, all right, I'm in.
Yeah,
good for you.
The work's always been there. The work was always the easy part about this. So what about you, Shelby? When did you I can't remember how we all started together. I think I have an idea, but I just want to make sure that I am correct in my thinking.
Yeah, so I had kind of, we sit in the Mantic together. I kind of overheard Bry talking to you about the podcast idea. And it was really obvious that you were really excited about it. And Bry he's kind of the type of person that needs a little bit of extra help to get like hyped up about a project, while I'm the exact opposite. I'm like all about it. Whatever I can do to help, I want to help. And a podcast is kind of something I've always thought about. That or like a Twitch stream, I've always been interested in it. So I totally butted in and said that you guys should absolutely do it and that I'd love to be involved or to support any way I could. And thankfully you guys let me.
And I was really into it because I knew what you were into. So, and I remember, I don't know if you remember the conversation, but like the first time that we recorded Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, that was the first episode that we did together. Yep. I was very specific on how I wanted to introduce you to the show, because what I didn't want to do was say, hey, here's my buddy's wife or here's Bryar's wife. I didn't want there to be a designation. I wanted you to just be on the show because you were on the show. And it was cool to hear how excited you were to jump in and start doing stuff, especially when you started writing, because then it was just like you were just as much a part of the show as anybody. So that was really cool for me, because what started as me testing it with Bryar and Cam to see if this was even a good idea, if this is something that I thought I had the time to do, if I could really pull off. And then Bryar's really what kind of like energized me to keep going and like pursue it and like not stop, because he was the first guy that really started saying, yeah, like, after we had that conversation where I was really challenged and then I really came back with like a plan, then like you even said, then I was on board with that because then I saw what you were wanting to do. And then Shelby, when you were so anxious to jump in and get involved and stuff like that, was like another breath of fresh air, because then it's like, all right, now this isn't just my thing anymore. And I remember it took me a little bit of time to start giving you guys like, access to the work doc and like bringing you in and like showing you the schedule and like telling you like how far I had gone down that rabbit hole of playing it all. But I was so excited to have you on board with it as like part of like the core foundation of the team. And that's why I wanted to do this with you, just to bring you guys all in to talk about like your part in like getting all started. So I mean,
Still
you guys are the reason that this show happened. So I thank you for all your continued time and support and effort and work that you put in the show. So
I'm still amazed at the schedule you have for this thing and how far out it is.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that a little bit later on. But so I'll just go into my second. So I came up with this idea in like August. I've been writing online for years. I've always liked to write online. That's one of the big things that me and Shelby clicked on, is like she's so into writing as well. And so we can kind of come at stuff as writers, which is super helpful in a show that's written in long form. But there was a point where I was writing a story kind of on how I would do something different with Avengers Endgame. And I had a lot of really good feedback. It did very, very well as far as like, stats and analytics or whatever. But the thing that I loved about it was how much time I got to spend like researching it and writing it and really thinking and planning it out and stuff. And I just loved the work part of it. And I think I'd been itching, kind of like you guys had said, you wanted to do something. You wanted to do a podcast or do a stream. Like you knew that there's something that you needed to do for yourself. Because I think especially like right now, you can get really wrapped up into just working for the people who are paying your bills. And that's important. You got to do that. But like, I didn't have like
for you.
Yeah, I had no outlet. I had all this creativity, but I was using all of it for something that, it was fun and important, but I just creatively, I just didn't care about it. And then after writing that story and feeling how I felt, and then thinking about like, man, maybe there's something there where I could just really approach the podcast in the way that I would want to produce it, to make it specifically. I don't want it to be, and the way I pitch it to you guys is I didn't want this to be a podcast that was like ands and ums and buts and ors and where we were just kind of going off the cuff and just like trying to figure it out. What I wanted this to do was to be like a very specific, like thought out and planned and written and organized and well-focused, thought out podcast. And to get to that point, it was a lot of me just planning and figuring it out and thinking what I would want to do and how the take should be, and to try to like organize all my buckets and stuff. And it took a lot of time just to get it all dialed in and organized so I could explain it. And I think one of the personal wins, I think, for the show was when you guys started working on episodes by yourself. Because Shelby, you've written 2 episodes, I think, for the show so far, and you've done those completely autonomously. I think I looked over it just to make sure that everything was like normal, but you essentially took a template and then just ran with it. So to me, that's when the show became something that was bigger and better than just something that I had in my back pocket as an idea, because now other people are writing on the show as well. So it was cool. So it went from, just an idea that I had back in, August of 2019, obsessed about it. I'm sure I talked about it ad nauseum, planning it out, trying to figure it out until December. And then I wanted to record a couple episodes in advance. And then we launched January 1 of 2020. The first episode was the first day of the new year. And that's what I wanted. I didn't want to start the new year off with just a resolution or something stupid. I wanted to start the new year with a project. And you guys have been helping me fulfill my New Year's resolution. So thank you guys so much.
Hey, you're welcome.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on. So what was the biggest challenge in starting? I've got a ton, obviously, but I'd be interested for you guys.
My biggest challenge was actually like trying to figure out how you were setting up the script, because again, you came at me with a very specific idea and plan. So for me, it was learning your plan, trying to figure out how you were writing the script, and then just figuring out how to roll with that. I mean, and then in addition to that, I think a pretty big challenge was then trying to find a home for the podcast, because I remember we talked about that for a couple weeks, like where we wanted it to live, how we wanted to put our little baby into the world.
And I'll be honest, I drug my feet on that because I didn't know either. It was like a theme in my life is I have fun making the thing. I'm terrible at talking to other people about the thing that I made. Like I suck at that. That's hard, especially like the easiest episode that I've had to market was the BioShock episode because I'm not in it. All I had to do was tell people about like what you guys did and how cool it was and what you broke down. And like that was the most fun I've had marketing any of our projects because I had no business being in it whatsoever. It was awesome. But yeah, I mean, all that stuff is difficult and interesting, and like you had to figure it out so we could keep going. I didn't like that part. I just like making the show with you guys.
Yeah,
you did a pretty good job of it.
Yeah,
like I remember, awesome. I just would throw you ideas of like, hey, I know we can, a podcast can be put out here, and here, and then you just kind of did that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I wanted to make sure that it was like wherever people could grab it. So like the big one was Spotify because that's my entire podcast experience has been on Spotify. For everything else I use Spotify for. So to me, I was like, okay, naturally that's where I want to start because I understand that property better than anything else. And then iTunes, because if you're on one, you got to be on the other. Apple Music is the other big one. I knew I had to be on that. And then YouTube, just because most podcasts that I listen to, they just throw their audio stream on a YouTube channel. And that's what we did. I realized that with our show being long form and not well known, that doesn't work out for us like anywhere near as well as it does on like the podcast space on Spotify and stuff like that. Like the videos, like the Let's Plays and stuff, those things play there. But it was just kind of like really just trying it out and trying to figure out how to get it where it needed to go. Do you remember what it was like the first time you looked at Spotify and you saw like an episode that we had done, like living on Spotify?
It was a pretty surreal moment.
It was.
Like, I remember I was at work, and I probably shouldn't say this because this is not what my boss would want to hear, but like, I remember I was sitting at work and just, because you had sent us the link prior to, so we'd already listened to it to make sure it didn't sound like garbage. And then I was on Spotify, And you said that, hey, it's live, it's up there. So I just pulled up and just sat there at my desk listening to us talk, just because like it was a cool thing. Like I helped make this. It's out there in the world for people to listen to. Like this is cool.
All right, so Shelby, what about you? What was like one of the hardest parts about getting started working on the show?
So this is totally selfish and like just has to do with my personality, but recording was just horrifying for me. I'm a people pleaser, and I always want to make sure I don't like disappoint or offend or, do anything to upset anybody. So that was probably the hardest thing for me. I think I read that first script like at least 20 times. And when we started recording, I could not hear myself talk over my heartbeat. I was just horrified.
And so other people have told me about that episode a couple of times and how comfortable and natural you sound. So, and I think I told you before, like, even though I know that you were super in your head a little bit, especially when we started, there was a point pretty early on where I think you made a really good point, and then like you clicked in and you settled, and then you cruised the rest of the show is really cool. Yeah. But I think like with any of us, like with me and Bryar, I mean, how many opening takes did we just butcher and have to start over completely just because we were like, we are not anywhere near as warm as I thought we were going to be. And so it's fine. It's, this is something that we all figure out, thankfully we have an editor that works with us. And so that helps to clean everything up and make everything.
It does.
Yeah. So many do-overs.
Thank you.
It's a labor of love, you guys, to clean up the show and make it nice and neat and acceptable for the public. For me, so far, starting the show actually wasn't that difficult because I was really excited about doing it. And when I'm really excited about a project, there is no stopping, which you guys are fully aware of.
Can't stop, won't stop.
Can't stop, won't stop.
The hard part is not having the time to pursue all of the different things that I want to do on the show. I think it's very common throughout the week that I will pitch you guys an idea or like, hey, what if we tried this or if we did this or what do you think about that? There are times where I'll just call Bryar and like just talk his ear off about things that I want to do with the show and stuff. And I apologize to you guys all the time because I'm sorry because I know it's got to be infuriating.
No, that's fine.
No, we love it.
But I think I have so much time or so much fun working on the show. I'm so proud of the show and what we've built that it's really easy for my brain to just drift into other things that I think that would either complement the show or the show could do well or something like that. So I think that's what's the most frustrating part is like if I had more time or capacity or like a dedicated crew or whatever, like I know that we could do something that was incredible here. We're just not there, which is totally fine, which is normal, which we're only 5 months old. We're a very young podcast in the span of all the other podcast groups that I've been part of. People have been at this 5, 6, 7 years and it's like they're full-time, like they're professional gamers. Like that is what they do day in and day out. But it just takes time to build there. So it's cool that I've got so many ideas to write down. So there's always something to work on. It's just unfortunate that I always feel like I'm working with like one arm tied behind my back,
Sure.
I will say though, I do enjoy those messages and phone calls just because like I like how they play out. It's always like I get a phone call like, hey, I had an idea. Here it is. And then like 20 minutes later, that idea has shifted into
bigger, better,
more realistic.
Mm-hmm.
More attainable.
Yeah,
more attainable.
True.
It's like, bro, I got an idea. Robot fights. Love it. How about instead?
I hear you, and I hear that you're saying no, but like I don't think you don't truly see what I mean when I say robot fights.
No, like I can't remember the last phone call it was, but you'd pitch an idea, and like I was on board, but I think I pushed back a little bit on like, let's do this instead, or like let's move the time frame because give ourselves more time to do it. So like I like those. It's cool, doing that whole brainstorming session of like taking an idea that's just rough and then kind of polishing up into something we can actually do.
A diamond, polishing it into a diamond,
so we can shine bright like a diamond.
All right. Well, this has been fun.
Wait, no. The next question is for you two specifically. You guys can't leave yet. So why did you both say yes to the show? You could have just as easily, other people gave me a lot more resistance. A couple people told me that they weren't interested. So why did you, Bryar, say yes first, and then Shelby, why did you, jump in as well?
So like I think I kind of touched a little bit on the previous one. I gave you a lot of pushback because I was very clear on I'm not getting involved if we don't have the time to facilitate this, because I don't want like 2 months down the road and it just falls flat. And like I said, you came back with legit answers, a breakdown, a plan, a schedule, like actual finite details of how you wanted this to all go, which really showed me it wasn't just a whim of like, hey, let's start a podcast. It was, I want to start a podcast. This is how I want to do it. This is my time frame. This is my plan. Are you in? So like actually having all of those answers, all that's the schedule, the breakdown, everything is why I said yes. Cause like I knew it wasn't just, let's just see how this goes. It was a legit thought out idea.
I think that's fair. I think I said a second ago, I have ideas flying nonstop. So it's not the first time that I've had an idea for something that I've wanted to do that maybe I didn't end up following up on. That might be a character trait of mine that I'm constantly battling. What? So I totally understand and I totally get that. But I'm glad that you eventually said yes. Shells, why did you nose your way in and force yourself into the show?
Well, so, like I said, I kind of overheard, and I was lucky. I came into it at the point where you had kind of given him more details. So I had a little bit more faith because I didn't see it in the beginning. I saw it when it was like, yes, this is laid out. This is everything. It's planned. We can do this. And a lot of the things that you wanted to touch on were things I was excited about. So when you did ask me, I was just like, yeah, of course.
Well, cool. Well, I'm really glad that you both said yes. Let's keep the positivity rolling. What's your favorite memory so far?
I've been going first this whole time. You want to go first?
Shaking it up. Okay. I have two answers. So my favorite retcon memory is the episodes that we've recorded during COVID. It's been really fun to kind of forget about the craziness and just awfulness that's going on in the world right now, and just get to sit down and like chat with my friends about my most favorite things. Most recently, I got to sit down with Bryar and talk about my most favorite video game ever, BioShock. So that was just incredible. It was, a totally different experience for us. So it was cool.
It was really fun to edit because I've never really had that dynamic. I think I messaged Bryar, or maybe it was in the group chat that we're in. But I was like, I feel like I'm eavesdropping on like a married couple's relationship, but it's because
really?
The entire time you guys are talking to me like I'm already in the room. So I'm like editing and you guys are, making minor mistakes. There were very few mistakes in that episode that I
You don't need to say that. You don't need to lie. It's okay.
And it would happen, like you guys would just directly start apologizing to me. So I'm just like there editing and laughing, and so it was a blast. It was one of my favorite episodes because for two reasons. One, it was completely written without me. You guys worked on it completely on your own, recorded it and shipped it over, and all I had to do was clean it up and get it ready. So it was cool for a lot of reasons, but it was also really fun to listen to. So if you're listening to this podcast and you have not checked out the BioShock episode, even if you don't like video games, you'll probably enjoy hearing Shelby and Bryar talk to each other, over-talk each other, make corrections. Yeah. It's a really good time. I enjoy it quite a lot. So yeah, very cool.
So my second favorite memory was when Jeff asked me to be on the Jeff Needs Help podcast. As the Retcon team, like we all immediately came together and like discussed, the details, if we were going to do it, how we were going to do it, all these different things. And I just really feel like we felt like a team for the first time, like a serious team. So it was just really exciting. And I was really grateful that, one of our team was asked to be on another podcast. It was really cool.
Bryar and my first concern was your safety. I think.
Yeah.
And just anytime somebody reaches out and wants to talk to a woman, I mean, if they're on my team, like I've got questions like, what do you want with her? Like, what are your intentions? Like, are your intentions honorable? And so I had very specific questions about like how to make sure that you were safe, how, to vet this guy a little bit and stuff like that. Ended up being an awesome episode. I really enjoyed listening to it. I'll talk about it in my favorite memory section a little bit later, but I was very proud of you on that episode. It was very cool to listen to. I think Bryar and I just wanted to make sure that you weren't being groomed to be kidnapped and sold to Taiwan,
Fair.
I would
Taiwan?
enjoy keeping her here. She does tend to take care of me pretty amazingly. So if I can keep her here, that is ideal.
We will try to maintain that as a show initiative, as a key goal. Keeping Shelby in the Mantic is very important.
All right, so favorite memory. Honestly, I think just everything about recording that first episode, because that's when it became real. It stopped being just an idea and started being this tangible thing we're doing. And it was a very surreal moment, just recording that first episode, putting it out there, making it a thing, and now saying, okay, now we have a podcast
that everybody can see, everybody can listen to. It's crazy.
Type it into the interwebs and you can find it. Listen to it.
It's there.
Go into, and that was the thing. It's like, it's stupid, but like, you know, it's one thing to hear yourself like when you're playing like the MP3 file that's on your phone. It's another thing when you just can open up your Spotify app and then tap on it, and now it's playing through your car system. Like, there's something just really, really cool about that. For lack of a better or more interesting term, it's just pretty neat.
Well, it's cool too. Whenever you know, like you have family members that you don't. You know, you didn't tell them about the podcast, but they're messaging you saying, hey, listen to your podcast, because like they saw the post on Facebook. Like, it was really great. Really loved it. Can't wait for the next one. I'm like, that's awesome.
My Uncle Donnie on that one post. Yeah, I was like, oh.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I also did like our Batman episode where you finally admitted that you were wrong and I was right. I will reference that any chance I get.
I was just thinking about, again, I'm constantly trying to figure out the show what's best for it, right? I just had a different line of thought than I thought I would have, and it didn't work out. So, but, you know, I am man enough to know when I'm wrong. I can take new ideas and meld them with my own and have new, different types of experiences and thoughts and understandings like a normal American person should have. All right, so I'll just do mine real quick. Because I have a couple favorites. You know, recording the first 2 episodes, Endgame was awesome because it was over 2 hours and we were just breaking down Avengers Endgame, and it was cool because that, to me, it's like that's a long document to work through. I think our standard, we do everything on a Google Doc. Our Google Docs run like 18 to 24. I think Avengers Endgame was like our longest one that we had done, and it took us forever to break down, not because we were taking our time on it, because we were legitimately putting thought into breaking this stupid thing down. And there's so many different like threads and angles. We didn't want to leave anything out. But to be able to talk at length that long for something that passionately and not just feel like, oh, this is the worst. Like, it was, at no point was I like, this sucks. I was just like,
That's good to know. That's good to know.
I was just like, we're not done yet. Like, we're not done yet. Like, we haven't covered this yet. Like, it was like this constant urge, like, we got to get through this. We got to get through this.
I remember we constantly were watching the clock too. Like every 5 minutes, we're looking at the clock, seeing how much time we had. Like, all right, cool. I can go into this a little bit longer before we go into the next topic.
Yeah, and so the same thing. As much as I didn't want this to be like an and or like podcast, I also didn't want us to be just like wasting time and like spinning fluff. Like, that shit drives me crazy. That's why I edit the show, because I want to go through, and if we, you know, if it takes me 3 times to say one thing, I'm taking out 2 of the 3. It's not going to benefit you or the show to hear me try to figure out how to say, you know, Komodo dragon or something stupid. But yeah, I mean, that's why you do that stuff, just to make sure that it's out there. So yeah, it was really, really cool to do both of those things, to spend that much time breaking it down. And then like with Shelby, you know, there's a point where like you legitimately changed my thinking on a couple of things. You corrected me on the pronunciation of Durmstrang, which I thought was Durmstang. And I'll be honest, it's just been a while since I've seen the movie, and maybe I just didn't catch it. But I remember I was like adamant that you were wrong, and you
were like arguing with me.
You were so gracious and so confidently right, and so actually factually right, that I just love that episode just because it got to unfold the way it did. So like when I write the show notes, I write like little kind of Easter egg things of like what happened in the show for context. And I was like, yeah, Shelby was right. Devon's an idiot. It is called Durmstrang, not Durmsting. So yeah, love those memories. Those are really, really good. Like you said, Shelby, I was really proud to hear you on the podcast, the Jeff Needs Help podcast. He reached out to us, asked if Shelby would be interested in doing a podcast episode, because we had just done Ready Player One, the book.
Yep.
He wanted to compare it to the movie, which I thought was a cool concept. And then Shelby had just done it, so she was very well versed in it anyway. And so we listened to the podcast episode. You know, in the beginning, there's a good chunk of time where you're just Shelby's just talking about working on the show and what it is and how much time and energy we put into it and how proud she is of the show. And so it's one thing to talk about what you work on and, you know, be proud of it. You know, I wrote this story, you know, I made this thing, like, check it out. It's another thing to have somebody else talk about the thing that you're a part of. So it was, that was like the first time that had happened. It was really, really cool to hear you just talk about us on a different show.
Very cool.
Okay, so thank you for doing that. So Shelby doesn't take compliments very well at all.
No, I don't.
I don't know if you've got that. And then I kind of said it before, the last thing was I just love seeing you guys do the BioShock episode together, because like I said, it was just one of those things where I had, you know, put these, you know, this kind of protocol together of like what goes into the show. Here are all the buckets that you do, and then you guys took that, ran with it, knocked it out, recorded it, sent it to me, and then I just got to put it together. So it was cool. It was a very proud moment. All right, so we've referenced it a couple of times how much we write on the show. The show is researched and written out. What I want to go into now is how do we prepare for an episode? Because I think you might not be surprised to hear that it's a little bit different depending on Shelby's and my style versus like Bryar's style. Like it's just different. So like Shelby, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Small differences. So it's nothing really, but we'll cover it. So I definitely reread, rewatch, or play through the material again. I read through the script. Sometimes I write it when Devon is gracious enough to let me. And I read through it probably at least 4 times. Better than the 20 times of that first one. I'm getting more comfortable with it. But I like to make sure I know what I'm talking about. Recently, I've been waiting to decide what I talk about in the retcon section so that I can kind of take whoever's opinions that I'm talking to and maybe use that to mold my decision a little bit too. I like listening to our discussion and letting it sink in. And you guys really help me think of different ideas that I wouldn't have on my own ever. So, yeah.
And then, like, for me, depending on the medium, I like to re-watch or experience or play something like I want to do it like twice. So like once as a fan, just to like take in the experience and try to get through it. And then again, like as I'm putting together the episode, so I make sure that contextually I've got everything that I need to have. It's really hard, especially like with stories. It's hard because they're so long. And so I use like wikis, like different Wikipedias, not just Wikipedia, but there's different wikis for like several different websites. So I use that to try to help me break the story apart, because oftentimes they'll have like long, breaks of like chapters or acts or whatever, and then it's easier for me to put these in a bucket so I can figure out how to pace out the show. But then when I'm writing the episode, like you can't write a show and just look at a Wikipedia document. Like there's no way that you could build a show. And if you're doing that right now, you got a lot of holes in your stories, man, because there's so much that they constantly leave out. So usually I'm stuck between multiple sources on that one specific topic, just to reference to make sure that I've got all my stuff together. So I read through all that stuff. That goes into the writer's room. That's probably what takes a little bit of most of the time. And then I'm putting together the entire story for there and back again. That takes the most amount of time because I got to make sure that I'm parsing out the entire story. So I write all that, I read all that, I re-experience the stuff, and then I write the script, obviously, and then I try to go back through it a couple of times before we start. I write it all the way through, I take a break, look at it with fresh eyes if I've got time, and then the day of the recording, I want to go through it again, just to, again, just get a good lay of the land and make sure that I have everything together before I record the episode. So a lot of time goes into each and every episode just to make sure that we're doing it right. What about you, Bryar? What's your strategy?
What about you, sweetie?
I think it's bold of you guys to assume that I do any preparing for this. I've been very adamant in multiple episodes that I read the first script, I read half of the second script, and I have not read a script since.
Now, would you agree that you might have a better time if you did read the scripts ahead of time?
I would say that if I read the scripts, you would not have to edit out as many screw-ups.
I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that.
I think that's fair.
I mean, Shelby handles the books because I don't read often, and when I do, I'm super slow at it. I can't read fast at all because I can't retain it. So since I primarily do like the movies and games with you, usually it's a game we're already playing anyway. So like I'll play through it, and then the movie I'll just sit down and rewatch it. And then usually by the time I get around to finally like watching the movie, you've already written the script. So as I'm watching it, I just go through and enter in all my sections that I need to as I'm watching it, so it's fresh. And that's about the extent of it.
It's nice, at least when you guys both have the story in your brain, because there's been a couple of times where we're talking and either I've misspoken about something or I got the order wrong or something like that, and you've been able to jump in and kind of say like, I don't think that's right, which is great. I mean, I think it's kind of a built-in safeguard to make sure that we're always trying to get the most relevant and factual, accurate information out on these. Because if we're going to try to retcon these things and say what we do differently, we should at least try to do our part to get it right. So obviously, like anything, this is a human-made show. Humans make mistakes. We're going to have incorrections and need corrections directions and stuff like that. But overall, we put a lot of time, energy, and effort trying to get the show right, make sure that it's well thought out, just so we have a really good product that we're proud to share with you, and hopefully that you like. So maybe our three approaches are a little bit different, but I think at the end of the day, we really try to work on a great show the same way.
Well, and I think it works too, because from our 12 years of being together,
Gross.
Our personalities are so opposite, as I'm sure everyone can already tell, but it just works. So I think it works for the podcast too, that, he's kind of, no offense, flying by the seat of his pants. And I over prepare, and Devon, I think you over prepare as well. So it's kind of a nice balance.
I like to think I was very upfront at the beginning about what I plan to bring to the table. So,
you've brought it. You've brought it,
this should
honey.
be no surprise to anyone.
You've done
Fantastic.
We're not saying you need to start writing. We're not saying you even need to start researching. All we're saying is just give it a good once over, maybe before we record it.
Yeah, I probably should start reading the schedule or the scripts.
Well, just the scripts, man. Just the scripts, not
just once.
Just once. Maybe
I'll think about it.
Maybe the morning. I don't know. We'll see. So what podcasts were you influenced by? Do you think were similar to? Do you strive to be like? What are your influences?
So last podcast on the left was a huge one for me, simply because that was the first podcast that I think I ever listened to, let alone actually got into. But I've been a huge fan of that one since, I can't remember, it was either you or Cam told me about it 2 years ago. And so I've been huge into that ever since. And watching, you go back and listen to their first episodes, and it started up very similar to us, where it's just, them in a room talking into a microphone. And you look at where they were and then where they are now and how huge their podcast is. It's pretty inspiring. I don't necessarily want to be just like them, because we obviously have a very different podcast, but the route they took and how they got there is something I would like to see happen here.
Yep.
So, and then outside of that, I also bounce around a lot between the podcast Hello from the Magic Tavern and then the No Sleep podcast. Depending on my mood, if I want to be super spooky and a little freaked out, I listen to No Sleep. If I just lighthearted good time, Magic Tavern. And if I want to hear about how someone brutally murdered a lot of people, then last podcast.
Sometimes you're just in the mood.
Yeah, man.
So for me, I've been obsessed with Last Podcast since Bryar actually introduced me to it after he was introduced to it, which I think that's so cool that that's the way a lot of podcasts get spread around. It's really cool. Definitely give me all the serial killer information that you have. I just love to hear it. And then working from home in the same attic as Bryar during COVID has meant that I've been listening to Hello from the Magic Tavern a lot more. I think it's really good right now because it is so lighthearted. Again, it's a little escape from the craziness going on right now. And we actually also listen to Hello from the Magic Tavern when we take Oliver for car rides to look for cows. He's 2. He likes to look for cows, and he likes to listen to that podcast too. So, yeah. What about you?
So the podcast that made me think that we could pull this off is called Knockback. It's the Retro and Nostalgia podcast. It's by a guy named Colin Moriarty and his brother Dagan. Colin wrote for IGN for a while, left, went to Kind of Funny Games, and then there was a huge issue between him and some other people, and it was a big thing. So he kind of struck off, went kind of dark for a while, and then resurged with this podcast called Colin's Last Stand. He tried a couple things, some worked, some didn't, but one of the ones that he did was this Knockback one, and it was an episode that I listened to where he and his brother broke down the Phantom Menace. And Phantom Menace is widely regarded as one of the worst Star Wars movies. People typically hate the prequels in general. They definitely have their place in canon. They definitely serve their purpose for a lot of ways, but people just tend to hate those movies. The thing that was fascinating was the way that he and his brother just really set up the story, kind of broke it down, and just talked about it, not with like hate or anger or sarcasm or whatever. They just really, the movie was a movie. It was made. So that means you have crew, you have cinematographers, you have writers, you have, different people that worked on this project that you might not agree with what the final product was, but that still merits a conversation about what was created and how it was created and all how it came together. And like after I finished that episode, I just sat there. I think it was on my lunch break when I finished it, and I was just like eating a cheeseburger on my lunch break or something. And I was like, I could do that. I don't know if I could do like what Lost Podcast does. I don't know if I could do what other people do, but I think I could do that. If I could figure out how to do something kind of like that, then I think that I've got something here. And then my time listening to the Last Podcast, and we were always talking about that. Armchair Expert and like a handful of other, like there's so many podcasts I listen to because I drive so much, like Conan O'Brien's podcast. It's just the more you listen to them, the more you think like these are just people that are talking about stuff that they're passionate about, that they're interested in. Once you figure that out, then it's just whether or not, you can figure it out how to do it yourself and have the time to pursue it. So that's really for me, like how it all started. Like Knockback was the one that made me think I could do that. Everything else were influences on different like tastes that I liked and stuff that I wanted to, influence me in the way that we produce the podcast. I've listened to a lot of podcasts where people are just every episode they figure it out as they go, and I just can't stand how much time I feel like they're wasting. I don't know. I think sometimes it might work. I don't think that would work for our format at all. I think some of like our Let's Plays are a little more free form, but I think that there's so much value when you do the time, the research, and plan it all out. And then you're having a good conversation about something thoughtful, not just like, oh yeah, I thought this was cool. I heard this today, or this just happened. What do you think about it? As opposed to here's what happened. Let's dissect it a little bit and let's expand on it kind of thing. All right. So how far ahead do we plan our episodes of our podcast?
So the episodes themselves, I would say, are planned 2 to 3 weeks out. That's usually roughly when like we start like writing the you start writing the scripts, and we start to really kind of like hammer out the let's record on this day. Let's do this. We'll, make sure we have enough time to edit. Make sure you have enough time to edit. I don't know why I keep saying we.
You're there in spirit. I'm usually complaining to you in a chat while I'm editing.
Yeah, that's a lot of, hey man, maybe try to not say things wrong next time.
What if you just practiced, man? What if you just read it over just once, What if?
But yeah, so each individual episode, I'd say like 2 to 3 weeks planned out. That way we have plenty of time to comfortably just work everything. The whole podcast as a whole, your schedule, which is incredibly impressive as far as like future episode, it's broken down what episodes we want to do, seasons we want to do, the whole thing, and it's out until like the end of 2021. It's
like 2 or 3 years out as far as like the season's broken out, the way that I want the show to grow out, the different topics and stuff. Because like that was the hard part about starting, is like not being able to stop figuring it out, like what I wanted it to be, and I just needed a clear line of sight.
My favorite part about that, the first time I saw the schedule, because you didn't share the schedule with us until we were on like this 3rd episode. Yeah. And that's when it was like, all right, guys, here's everything. I didn't want to freak
you guys out. I think it was like I was starting and like I knew that I had it, and I knew that I had a really good plan. And so then I was starting and I was like, what if this fizzles out? What if they start to hate it? What if they don't want to do this anymore? So I think it was one of those things where I was like really just trying to like hold back, I guess, a little bit, not scare you guys off on like what I wanted to do with the show. But yeah, eventually I was like, fuck it, you guys are clearly involved in a really big way. Why am I holding anything back? And then I just unveiled this ridiculous scrolling document. And that was like, it's a loose guideline. I had a pretty clear idea of where I wanted to start and like how I wanted to rotate between episodes. Like I knew I didn't want it to be like a book podcast, a movie podcast, or like a video game podcast. I wanted to switch the topic, which is why it rotates, which is why I had to plan it out. But like at any point, you guys can really pitch any idea, and then we'll just put that in its place and kick something else backwards. So I like that. We've done
multiple times.
Yeah, already. Absolutely. Which is we do more and more. So I like that I have kind of a scaffolding of if we had no other inspiration, we knew exactly what we could work on for the next several years, which is stupid to say. But like all the other stuff, the Let's Streams, the Let's Plays, and everything else, like that all kind of happens like naturally. Like that's just more based on inspiration, or like something like a new beta will come out, or I'll get excited about something, or you'll get excited about something, and then we'll just kind of jump into it.
Yeah, so I mean, you guys have kind of covered it, but I just want to say that I really like that when we have ideas, we pitch them and we can throw it into that schedule, even though the schedule's there and it's super planned out. We can still go with whatever we want to talk about. And I just think that's really cool.
Yeah, because I think I told you guys before, like, passion is what drives the show. And that's really why I took myself out of BioShock. I was having a really tough time sinking my teeth into the property, and I tried twice. I could try the first time, and I was ignoring everything and talking to Bryar, so I completely missed the story, and I just didn't know what was happening. And then I think I tried to make myself get into it again, and I was forcing myself to play it, and it was ruining the experience. And I remember, like, in my head thinking, like, that's not what the story deserves. Like, I know Shelby loves this property. Like, that's not fair to Shelby. It's not fair to the people that made BioShock. I'm not going to give it a fair shake if I'm forcing myself through this game. Sure. And so then when Bryar was down to jump in, then it became a much better experience. And I think that's why the episode came together so well, because now it wasn't just about BioShock. It was about how BioShock meant a lot to you, Shelby. And it was about how the first time Bryar was able to see, like, Shelby take, a really big interest in a game and a property, because that was kind of the first time that had happened. Yep. And, like, I think it was really important for me to, like, really filter myself out and say, like, no, don't just do it just because it's on the docket. What's the best opportunity to, like, break the story down and give it the most successful experience? And that's kind of what we did. And that's cool. So I like that from a content standpoint. We're very versatile. We can kind of move anything in and out and around. You've pitched, like, Lord of the Rings, I think, Shelby. There's some other stuff that you wanted to do. Bryar, you have a bunch of good ideas on, like, graphic novels and stuff. The Batman Who Laughs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I like that we'll also pinch hit who can be a part of the show, because that's always been, like, my thing is this can be done by anybody as long as you kind of understand, like, what our style is and, like, what our bucket is and, like, what our flows are. Anybody can be part of the show. You just got to have the passion to do what you're going to do to break it down, so you're not wasting people's time.
Sure.
Well, I like how, too, there's a couple, like, future episodes, too, where we've even pitched the idea of, like, hey, do you want to get so-and-so in this one and have them sit in with us? Just because, they absolutely love this piece of work, as much, if not more than we do. So, yeah.
Was I want to be able to throw everything in my backpack and go wherever I need to go to make this podcast. That's how it was designed. I wanted this to be something that, like, brought me and my friends closer together so we could spend more time. And to do that, everything's got to fit in a backpack so I could drive, set up, and record. And that's kind of what's cool about wanting to bring other people into this at some point is once we get a good foundation established. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is how we do it. And then we start kind of fanning it out a little bit and getting more, thoughts and different voices and stuff. I think it'll be really cool to see how it organically, like, grows and becomes bigger and stuff like that with what we've built, which is pretty cool. And I think that'll be a really good positive thing when and if it happens. We'll see. All right, so next question. Why is there a clinking sound at the beginning of every episode of Retcon Air? Weird.
We toast. We do a celebratory, hey, let's have a good show shot. Shot.
Everybody.
Yeah, so every team has a tradition. We are no different in the fact that we have very specific tradition. I just know that different people from all over the world, before, during, after, they have some kind of way to celebrate, like, the fact that they did something, they achieved something together. I've always felt that in my stuff that I've done, I like to have drinking involved with it because drinking is the best. So I thought really early on that it would be cool. I always figured we'd have, like, a beer or something while we were doing the show. But when I was at Bryar's house, Bryar was talking up this new Tennessee apple whiskey. And I love Jack Daniels. It's the unofficial whiskey of the show.
The official, unofficial.
But then when Bryar was talking about that, I was like, oh, let's just do a shot of it before the show. And then I can't remember how we decided to make that an anchor in every single show. I think maybe we just were recording and then we toasted it and it came through. And I decided just to make that a part of it.
That's what it was. I gave you the bottle and the glasses. You poured us each a drink, and then you just held yours up and said something like, to a good show or whatever, and we clinked, and it actually came through on the mic, but we didn't know it came through until you started listening to it later.
Yeah. And so I think maybe that makes more sense. So then, we did it naturally. I heard it in post, and I was like, that's really cool. And so I had designed the intro for Retcon Air it's a hybrid. It's the THX kind of intro sound when a movie starts, the zzzz, and then I mixed that with another.
That was beautiful.
Thank you so much.
How'd that go?
I already told you once, I'm not doing it again. So, so I mixed that with another piece of audio that used something similar. It's not the same thing, but it's a similar effect, and they go together very well. So that's how I made the intro, and then I put that clink right in the beginning because it just fit well. There's something about that as being kind of like the kickoff, the starting point. It worked really well with the song. I don't know. It was like this magical, cool thing that worked out, and it was all about drinking Jack Daniels. I loved it.
Well, like you didn't even tell me either. You just let me hear it for myself. And then I was like, wait, is that? And you're like, sure is, bud. I'm like, all right, love it, leave it, let's do this.
And by the time I heard it, like, I thought it was just in the plan from the beginning. So I was like, yeah, this is cool, like, sweet. And then I had heard afterwards, you're like, no, like, that wasn't intentional.
Accident.
It just happened.
Which I love stuff like that. I thought that was really cool.
Absolutely.
And most people, you get a little nervous before you do any recording or filming of any kind.
Hi, that's me.
So,
hi, I'm here.
Taking a shot, takes the edge off a little bit, gets you in a good mood, makes you warms up the cockles of your heart, so you can have a great show. And I think we've been having many great shows, one drink at a time.
Yep.
So, next question: where do we typically record?
We typically record here in the Mantic, which is, instead of having a man cave because my basement's gross, I have a man attic because I have a nice finished attic. Man attic, Mantic.
Creaky. It does sound a bit like a pirate ship, but that's what makes it endearing. Because
some would say it gives it charm.
I think it's got a really nice rustic piratey vibe, and I think that's why it works so good for our show.
Definitely.
It also helps justify all the drinking, so
Oh,
Yes.
fair point. Yeah.
Because you need to. You got to.
But we record Bioshock sitting right here on our futon, much like we are right now.
Yeah, because during the non-pandemic time, we record in the Mantic. Mm-hmm. Recently, we've had to do this kind of distance recording, and then for the Let's Plays and everything else, we do that via the PlayStation. So I have a PlayStation 4 Pro. I thought that Bryar had a PlayStation. Turns out he does not. I was corrected.
I'm pretty sure I was very upfront early on that
I had read the script and found out that Shelby had left a little note in there that said, no, this is my PlayStation. So, Bryar, what was that? Did you buy her the Darth Vader edition PlayStation 4 for her birthday or for Christmas? After I was corrected, I remember hearing it.
It was an early Christmas present, I believe. No, it must have been birthday because I had bought you the Xbox maybe for your birthday, and then my birthday was coming up later in the year, and he got me the PlayStation.
Got her the Darth Vader one.
Yeah.
So nice. So then when you guys did the Bioshock episode, you were sitting there, and I was trying to figure out how you were going to record that, if you're going to use like your party chat, or like how'd you record that one?
I downloaded a voice recording app for my phone and just used my phone to record our audio because you had the fancy mic and we don't have one for here, so we just kind of made do with what we had.
Yep.
Like I said, we're a DIY podcast. But I remember, I did a couple test recordings on my phone to make sure it didn't sound like absolute garbage, and it sounded, good enough. So I was like, all right, let's roll with this.
That's the thing that people forget is like there's a lot of money and technology that goes into your microphone and your cell phone. So if it doesn't take a lot of money to start recording yourself, you could literally start with a cell phone, and then the better equipment that you get, the better you'll sound. But like at some point, you just got to start with what you got. So it was really cool that even though it was 2 of you together, you recorded in a cell phone and it sounded really good. So obviously there's a little bit of audio difference between what I've got and what you got, but I think overall, the content is what matters first. I think we put together a really good show, and then we're just constantly trying to make every episode sound better than the episode before it.
Hey, if there's anyone out there who just wants to help fund us getting another microphone, that would be pretty dope.
And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, you guys sound like garbage, you make a podcast. Let's see how good your podcast is.
Yeah, come at us.
Asshole. So Shelby, how was that experience for you? Was it pretty cool? Is it something you'd ever done before?
Yeah, so it was honestly one of the coolest experiences that we've had probably ever, honestly. Normally when we come up here, Bry is sitting where we are on the futon playing, whatever. And I'm normally over at my computer, which is like 10, 15 feet away. So we still kind of sometimes talk to each other about what we're doing, but to actually sit down and have a solid conversation here was just really, really cool. And it was hilarious because I kept giving him little pats on the leg, like trying to congratulate him. and he kept thinking that I was telling him he was doing something wrong.
Yeah, and I left that in there. Like I was saying, like it felt like I was just eavesdropping on a couple. That part's definitely in the episode. It's one of the many reasons that you should listen to the episode because it's so funny to hear Bryar like, what am I doing? I feel like you're making me do it wrong. And then Shelby's like, I'm just trying to support you. And I'm like, oh, you guys, this is the most adorable conversation I've ever heard. So it's great.
Well, like what they don't know is up to that point, I screwed up multiple times, which like she pointed out. So like I would just Devon edit that out and I'd redo it. So then when she's over here like, I'm like, what did I do wrong? I read the script that time. What did I do?
She was just trying to say that you did an outstanding job, good sir. And she's so proud of you.
Yeah, I was just excited. The only strange thing that we found was that we kind of forgot, at least I forgot, that we were recording a couple times and we kept turning to each other instead of talking to the phone, and we both kept having to kind of remind each other like, hey, phone's down there, we got to face there.
That's like the dual purpose of the script. It's to keep us focused, make sure that we have a place to record everything and put everything in together and organize it all, but then it's also to keep us going and like remember that we're still doing a podcast, because I think a lot of times we just really groove into the fact that we're having a good conversation, which is awesome, but it doesn't help you when you're trying to still be like time conscious and like keep the party moving. So I totally get that. So switching gears a little bit, what are our favorite video game consoles?
So again, I've been going first a lot. You want to go first or you want me to?
Sure, I'll go first. I've always been a Game Boy girl since the original, not original, but since Pokemon came out.
Did they ever make a Game Girl?
No.
I don't think so.
That they should have.
Nintendo, get your house in order.
Oh.
Anyway.
I definitely played Pokemon obsessively growing up, like on recess. That's all I did, Pokemon. So now I'm enjoying the Switch because it's obviously the grown-up version of a Game Boy. My most favorite console in my possession is my Galaxy-themed 3DS XL. It's beautiful. Bri also bought me that.
Oh, I remember that. I think I was there for that purchase. I think I wrung you out.
Probably.
Yeah, and then you helped me because the first one, something was wrong with it. It was defective. So you helped me then do the exchange, and together, by our powers combined, we transferred all of our data from the old to the new, which took forever.
Yeah, that system wasn't great. But yeah, it is a beautiful system. Good job.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I still sometimes look at it. It's up on my desk. I just don't have games that I am really into to play on it right now, but I'm never giving that thing away. It's beautiful. I love it so much.
I have a 3DS XL that it's not my favorite console, but I take it when I travel, and I only have like 4 games for it because there's like only a handful of like quality games on that console anyway.
Yeah.
But the ones that are on there are fucking great. So
Yeah.
what are you gonna do, Brylander?
My favorite console right now, realistically, is honestly probably my my Xbox One. Got that fancy Gears one. So Xbox, so like I started with like a Sega when I was little, and then like my first like real system after that was the PS2. Loved it, played it just all the time. Like I think the first series I ever really got into was the Jack and Daxter series on PS2. Like loved that. And then I went from there to the Xbox 360, and like that's where I was introduced to Gears of War and Assassin's Creed, which are my favorite game series. So because of that, the Xbox will just always have a special place in my heart. It's just, like I said, I got like the fancy red Gears of War one that's was a limited run.
Makes a sweet noise when you turn it on.
Yeah, it's fun, and it's that will forever be my favorite system, just because like I have the most time into it, in the Xbox in general. That being said, I play the PS4 way more because you and I play games together, and our friend Kelsey, we all play games together.
I love you, Kelsey.
She'll never listen. She'll never listen to this episode. Never. So it won't matter.
But yeah, like the three of us are constantly playing games on it. So like I play that one more, but I'll still always have that special place for the Xbox. And then my computer that I play Final Fantasy 14 on all the time.
So that's the hardest thing about this is like I get the idea of how many people spec out awesome rigs for their computer and their PC master race stuff. Like I get all that stuff, but like, dude, I spend all of my time working on a computer. I don't want to get off work and then recreate on my computer. Like that's not like I'm just over the keyboard and the mouse and the system and this fucking chair. By the time I'm ready to leave it, I want to go sit on my couch and chill out and drink a beer and like play video games.
I've been actually having that same problem a lot lately. Like, I know I just said I play Final Fantasy all the time. I used to play that religiously. Like, every night Final Fantasy 14 with my buddy Bob. Since I started my current job, I've been having a really hard time wanting to play it for the exact same reason you just mentioned. Like, I'm at a computer all day now, so like I don't necessarily want to go and then sit back at another computer. So
yeah,
it's hard.
I was like kind of in a hand-me-down system kind of thing. So there was like a Sega that I played at a friend's house. There's like a Nintendo 64 that I played at a friend's house. But like anything that I ever had was either like my brother had the PlayStation or whatever else. I didn't have anything of my own. I just got to play everything and I liked everything. When I was a little kid, I had a Game Boy and I loved it. And it was the one with like the magnifying glass that folded out and the little light.
Yeah, I had one of those.
And so that's how old I am.
Yay.
That's back in the day before they had backlit systems. You had to bring your own fucking light, or you had to like wait till you pass a street light and like play for a little bit and then wait, and like play for a little bit and then wait, and like it sucked. It was ridiculous. It was dark.
Dude, I loved that little rig because it made the screen bigger. Oh, it was the best.
The fact that they had to figure out how to mount a magnifying glass tells you that they knew the screen was too small, but it was too expensive to make any bigger. So, but those were all the dark days. But like my hands down favorite console was the PlayStation 3 because it was the first console that was mine. I know that system is like the first one, like the 60 gig kind of fat boy backwards compatible one. That one's kind of like known as like the most expensive, like biggest mistake that Sony ever made about overcharging for their consoles. And I totally get that. But I was in Japan at the time. I had some disposable income. I was really homesick, and I just really wanted to get into something. And so that system came out at like the perfect time. So I bought like the on base kind of marketplace that they have, the PX. I went there and I bought like everything they had. I got the console, I got a controller, I got like whatever games they had. It was like Haze and like Stranglehold or something else. But then I just played the shit out of that console, and it followed me forever. Like I had that for years and years and years. Like the lens broke once, I got it repaired so I could use it again. And then like the PlayStation Network got hacked, so that sucked. So like I spent all this money to fix the console, and the console was irrelevant. And then later on, I got the yellow light death, and then I did the thing where you put it in the oven, like the motherboard in the oven, you clean it all off and get it all fixed, and it worked for like another couple months, and then it died. But that was it. So it had a good long life. It taught me many great things. I spent more time playing Battlefield Bad Company and Bad Company 2 than any other game on that console. It was a fantastic system, but it eventually died. So now, like you, Bryar, I play my PlayStation 4 more than anything else. But my 3 will always be my favorite, nearest and dearest to my heart.
Let me ask you this. Even though it died, do you still have it?
No, I think I ended up getting rid of it. I think I traded it or something. I think I got traded. Yeah, somebody wanted it for parts, so I spec'd it out. I would have kept it if I thought about it, but I got rid of it.
That's really sad.
Big sad.
Now I've been rebuilding my collection, so I have a PlayStation like 1, 2, and I have a 4. And I want to get a 3, but they haven't come down in price yet. They're still ridiculous. And there's only like 1 or 2 games I want to play on the thing, and that's kind of my thing. I'll buy a console and then like the 1 or 2 games for it. So I have like a Legend of Dragoon for PlayStation 1. I have like a handful of smaller games like Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver, and some like Blade 2 and Punisher and some weird stuff for PlayStation 2. And there's like a handful of games for PlayStation 3 that I want to buy, but the console is still too expensive for me to justify spending the money on it. So once it drops a little bit more, I'll grab one. I want my PlayStation family. I want all of them. I want 1 through 5 and 6 and 7 and whatever else they make. I want all of it. I want it all.
I want it all.
Hey man, good luck.
Prevalent question. Why don't we share more photos or pictures of ourselves? How come this is the first time that people, short of Bryar, I think I photoshopped you one time into Batman, and then I think I might have published both of you guys at one point in like the earlier episodes when you were like in the Mantic. That's it. We haven't really shown anything that we do ever. Why is that?
Did he do one of both of us? I think the first one you did was the Batman one.
I think I took those pictures. Maybe I never shared them. Maybe that's...
Yeah.
I think that's what happened. I don't know. The thought never really came to mind. We're doing a podcast. Why would I put a picture or video of myself out?
Yeah.
Sure.
And I think, Devon, you'll get into this more, but I think we just really wanted the episodes to be about the topics that we covered and our opinions and, all the work that we put into them, and not necessarily about the way that we look. To be honest, if you had asked me to record a video of that first podcast, I don't think I would have been able to handle it because I was already so nervous about just my voice being recorded, let alone my face.
Yeah, for sure. That's actually a really good point. I was kind of coming at it at like I just didn't want the hassle
Sure.
of bringing lights and camera equipment and setting everything up and getting everything white balanced, and like I'm a videographer by trade, so that's my life all the time. And it's like if you start adding these other things and it adds so much extra production time, it's going to be exhausting. I'm not going to want to do it. I'm going to get burnt out. But like if I say to somebody, like you said, you know, I just want you to do an audio podcast. We don't have to worry about what you look like. You can wear whatever you want. It's not going to matter. Then I think you're going to get a lot less resistance and people wanting to jump on board. Because like you said, you would have just said no if it was a video-based podcast, which sucks. I think I still could have won you over. I think it would have worked a little harder for it maybe. Took a little longer to get you on there, but I think I could have got you on there. But yeah, like you said, I think at the end of the day, I wanted this to not be about us. I wanted it to be about the projects. We're taking a lot of time to talk about these incredible storylines. We're breaking them down, explaining them all, and then giving our own take. I thought that was going to be good enough to kind of make everything work. What I failed to realize is that people still got to figure out who we are and to try to connect with us as we break this stuff down. So you look at any other podcast, there's some kind of about me or meet the team or whatever else. And I'm a worker and I hate talking about myself. So that's my bad. So we're trying to fix that. We're taking measured steps to correct this, and it will be better. We will be better. We will.
We will be.
We have to be.
We must.
All right. So speaking of being better, where do you want to take Retcon Air into the future?
I would love to see this thing get big enough where we could actually do some sort of tour with it. I think that would be pretty cool. I don't really know what that tour would look like, but I think it'd be cool. The one thing, like, it would be pretty cool. Like, let's say, like, you know, like all the other podcasts out there, they all have like Patreons and whatnot, and they're able to have some sort of podcast-based income.
You have podcast.
They have some sort of podcast-based income that, you know, kind of funds their show, and maybe at the end of the day they're able to pocket some of that, and like that would be cool. But like I don't want that to be the focus, because then I don't know. To me, it kind of takes away from like we're just doing this because this is something we want to do. This is something we want to, you know, this is something we love, and it turns it into, well, I'm doing this to make a paycheck.
Sure.
So like I don't necessarily like that would be cool if that happened, but that's not my goal. My goal is just for this thing to grow, get big, you know, have people actually talk about it, and then, you know, like I said, do some sort of tour where we can go out and like meet people because of it.
So Shelby, what about you?
I definitely would love to see this go wherever our listeners, future listeners, anybody, if you're listening, come on. Wherever you guys might want us to take it. You know, we've joked about ending up at like a Comic-Con or some kind of convention one day and meeting all of our fans or, you know, people who listen to us. And I just think that would be the dream, really, to know that we've kind of touched other people's lives and maybe, you know, lit a fire under them about something. Right now, I'm just hoping we can kind of reach the ears of some listeners who want to sit and listen to us chat and maybe chat with us about their favorite books, games, movies, you know, whatever.
Yeah, it's a really good goal. And I think at the end of the day, that's really all we want is we want to make sure that we're, you know, there's an audience out there. There's a ton of people that love movies, books, video games, podcasts, all that good stuff. So what we're trying to do is just figure out how to get ourselves in front of the audience that would understand what we do and like it. Yep. Same thing. So I know exactly how I would take us on tour. I know exactly where we would go and how we would do it. I have
of course you do.
A great many ideas about what I want to pull off in the future. Like I want to make a video game under the Retcon Air banner. I want to write a book. I want to make a movie. I want to do it like a different TV, like a mini series and stuff. Like there's so many ideas that I have that if we had time and capital, we could totally pull off. But it's me trying to rein myself in and like, let's slowly get out there. Let's start getting out there. I can't wait to do live recordings. I think we'll do panels at, you know, South by Southwest or Comic-Con or like wherever we end up going. I think there's potential for that. We just haven't established yet. I think that once we, looking back, you know, in a year or two or whatever, we'll be able to see like, oh yeah, so we, you know, this got us here, which got us here, which got us here. Collaboration is going to be a big initiative for the next couple of months of really just seeking out other podcasts that are kind of like ours and just getting featured on them, welcoming them in ours, and just really trying to get our name out in that way organically. And I think once we start establishing traction and developing a fan base, then we can start talking about where we could go as far as like placement. At some point, ultimately, I would love to do, and Bryar, I told this to you forever ago, I love to go and do like kind of watch parties like at movie theaters. You know, one day when we're allowed to go to movie theaters again, specifically I'd like to go to like movie taverns or like places that have like a restaurant and stuff like that. So people could come, you know, we could kind of figure out how to sell tickets for it or whatever. But what I would like, my ideal situation would be we have like a, you know, 3-ticket drink system. You know, you buy your ticket gets you 3 drink tickets, you get your meal and, you know, like a soda and like a shirt or something else or whatever. So you can come and just chill. I think we, you know, Bryar and I, we went to go see Last Podcast live with a friend of ours. And like I tried to reach out in advance. It was Bryar's birthday. I tried to set up this kind of cool thing. And it just didn't happen. There was like such a safeguard on like them. And like you had to get VIP tickets to sit up front and like and all this other bullshit. And we just ended up seeing Ben Kissel at a bar anyway for free. So all this energy and effort and stuff. And I just saw the guy at a bar. We got a picture with him, all that good stuff.
Super chill dude too. So nice.
But I take all that stuff into consideration when I figure out what we want to do, what I would want to do if that was us. And I would want to make sure that like if you were going to buy a ticket that you had us for the evening. You could hang out with us in advance before the show, you know, eat together, drink together, catch up a little bit, watch a movie and then do Q&A. Like that would be great. You know, just a couple, 4 to 5 hours. So you're getting your money's worth for your ticket. I think if you go to like a movie or a show or something else and you come out of there feeling like you just didn't get what you paid for, that sucks. And I don't want to do that. Movie theaters have really great seating. They have access to food and drinks and they have really good entertainment. And then we have a forum to talk. That's where I would love to be one day. We just have a lot of work to get there. So all right. Final question before we wrap up. What is the hardest part of making Retcon Air?
Finding the time, like a time slot that works for us to sit down, like before when we were doing it in person, for you to, you know, drive down here and record. And now it's just like finding a time that works for all of us in the evening. Because now for us to record, we have to wait until after we put our little guy to bed, so that, you know, we can actually be on here and, you know, do this without him running around screaming. Being just a frantic 2-year-old. And then, you know, all the time I imagine it takes you to actually edit out all the nonsense in an episode to actually make it something listenable.
I already told Danny, I was like, so you don't have me tonight because I'm recording. You don't have me tomorrow night because I'm editing. And then the day after, I think I'll be around. So we'll see what happens on Friday. But it's, yeah, I mean, so the writing of the episode takes a while. The editing, depending, takes a while. And then, you know, all the uploading and the optimizing and all the other stuff, like, it all takes a while.
For me, I definitely would say the recording too. We always want to make sure we do our best and hopefully have few enough screw-ups that it's not a total nightmare for you, Devon, to edit. I feel guilty that I'm not personally doing more. It's made me feel a little bit better to help write the episodes, but I still feel like it's not enough.
It's great though. I mean, so like legitimately, like you guys doing the BioShock episode, Shelby, you writing 2 episodes, that's helped so much just for like my mental well-being, because it's hard for me to not obsess about this anyway. But then if I'm constantly writing every single episode, it's like I can't ever take myself out of it. And so like part of the motivation for doing the FAQ episode and for letting you guys do BioShock is so I could kind of like take it easy for a month and just like chill. The whole pandemic has been exhausting for a lot of us in a lot of different ways, and I was really getting burnt out on like everything that we were all doing. So thank you so much for jumping in and doing that. It was awesome. So it is hard to put the show together, but you guys have definitely helped lighten the load. So thank you. For me, the hardest part is marketing it, honestly. And it's crazy because I work in marketing. I'm actually really good at marketing, but I loved sharing the BioShock episode because I wasn't in it. Like, that was so much easier to talk about you guys. I have a real tough time talking about myself. I don't mind talking to people. It's never been an issue for me. But like, if I have to talk about myself or ask you to see something that I did, it just feels so gross. I don't know why that part of me is broken. But it just is. It's legitimately the hardest part of the show. Like, I remember I was venting to you guys a while ago about trying to figure out how to train you to do marketing. And that was just me hating myself for like not wanting to do it. But recently I've been trying to like do a lot, like I said, I'm trying to do a lot more to expand us on Twitter because we have like no presence in a lot of places. And Twitter I've just never cared about, but like it's different because I'm not talking as me, I'm talking as like the company. So it's, you know, it's always like we, or, you know, we've seen, or we feel, or like, you know, what we do and stuff like that. And there's just something that's kind of freeing about saying we, not I, because now it's not about me, it's about me representing our brand. So now like our brand voice is now something that's kind of like, you know, we're kind of witty, we're kind of sarcastic, you know, we'll push people a little bit. We'll be thought provoking. We're not mean or like disrespectful or anything like that, but and stuff like that's kind of fun to figure out, like how all that works. So just trying to like shove our episode in your face and saying like, watch this, listen to this, like that's really hard. But the different ways where we've been kind of going out and connecting to other communities, like there's a Harry Potter community, there's a Star Wars community, there's a big video game community, there's this new like Twitter community that we're kind of figuring out. Those parts have been really awesome just to meet people. It just sucks where I'm trying to like shove stuff at them. So it's just that balance of trying to make sure that you're having relevant conversations that matter to people to find your audience, not just constantly going, oh, he's here again just to throw this thing at my face. Like that's, I hate that when that happens to me, and I don't want to do that to other people. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's, I don't know. I think it's hard to promote yourself or your project or your things in a sincere way.
Yeah.
Without just sounding like, oh my God, like I made this thing, you should listen to it.
Yeah. Because there's so much third party, like, you know, look at my makeup or my hair or my thing that I can sell you or my food or my whatever, you know, there's so much of that, and it's just all in your face, and it's all that, like, you know, I know if they're going to say something, they're only going to say something about that, and like I don't want that to be us or like you guys. I don't want people to look at you guys and go like, oh shit, Bryar's only going to do stuff that's about the podcast. Shelby's only going to do stuff that's about the podcast. I hope that you're not. I hope that you do other stuff. I think that you're at least sharing pictures of your kiddo a lot, and that's kind of nice.
Yeah, I'm kind of obsessed. Sorry to anyone who follows me on social media.
Yeah, he's cool.
He's really cute.
All right. Well, I think we've been at this a while. I think we've more than introduced ourselves and let them know how the vision is, how everything works. So do you guys have any other final thoughts about, you know, the show, how we got here, what the vision is, what the mission statement is before we shut down?
Just that, like, this is the first, like, not work, not income-based project. Is that, I don't know, I guess that's how I'm going to word it. This is, like, the first, like, non-work project that I've, like, really gotten involved in that I'm actually, like, super proud of.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I don't know, it's been fun.
We were going to call it the super non-work thing. That's like what it was going to be. And I was like, that just doesn't mean anything. And I was like, Retcon Air. Oh, that's way better. I like that. Let's do that one. So no, we were right there with you.
Thanks, man. Such a dick.
Well, I'm glad that you're proud of it. I'm glad that you like working at it. And I'm glad that you're used to not getting paid. So as soon as we can fix that, we'll fix that. But so far, your volunteering is appreciated.
Yeah, no problem.
Shelby, what about you? Any final thoughts before we shut this down?
No, I'm just really happy, and I hope that we can keep this going. And I don't know, tonight recording this has been really fun, you know, especially during everything that's going on. But even if that wasn't going on, it's been nice just to sit down and chat. And yeah,
I actually have to like see you to talk to you. Normally it's just us via like Skype or whatever, so this is nice. Actually, be able to like talk face to face.
Well, yeah, because typically when I work on these, I'm just looking at a static image of, you know, whatever the channel art's going to be, which is fine. But this is cool because I actually get to see us, and that just helps me kind of interact with you and see what you guys are doing, see the way that you're constantly interacting with each other. so yeah, it was cool. But yeah, so thank you so much for jumping in with both feet, being willing to do this, being willing to do the video aspect of this. This is very cool. I love working on this show. This show's fantastic. I think about it a lot, for good or for bad, but I love working on it with you guys. So I thank you so much for your continued support. You guys are the best.
Well, thanks for asking us.
Best, man. Yeah, seriously. Thanks for letting me nose my way into it.
Yeah, man, no problem. Well, so that's us. I think there's no other way that we could introduce ourselves than by just talking at length about what we do, why we do it, how we do it, and what inspires us. So hopefully that you're into it. Hopefully, if you like this, maybe check out the rest of our show. We publish episodes on the 1st and the 15th of every single month. We have yet to miss one. We do
Whoa, go us.
games and podcasts, and they're long form. I mean, if you're looking for something that's short and sweet to jump in, and I mean, you can come in, hang out for a little while, and then take it in little snack bites if you want to. But we do long deep dives. I mean, we take you through, you know, who wrote the story, the reviews on the story. We break down the entire thing, and at the very end, we wrap up with how we change it or what we might do a little bit differently. Sometimes, though, I don't really have feedback, because sometimes these things are so awesome where I don't really have a lot of feedback. There's just stuff I'd like to see more of, and that's some of the feedback we've got online is like, well, you're just hating on this movie. Like, no, listen to the podcast. We don't always just try to change everything, and the purpose of it isn't to just flame pieces of property that we think are terrible. That's never been the case, not once. We've only ever covered things that we absolutely love talking about, with the exception of BioShock that I took myself out of. So then people could talk about that they did love. So so we're very conscious of that. So
I don't even think, for the most part, our retcons either have been like huge story changing things. Just like minor details that we just like to tweak.
I think on name alone, people will just have an assumption of like, oh, retcon, they're changing everything. And so that's, you know, it's called Retcon Air, the Plotline Repair podcast. So I try to build some stuff in there, but hey, you know, it is what it is. And you won't know if you don't listen to it. So if you liked us breaking everything down, definitely take some time to check out the show. If you want to interact with us or have some input on, you know, what we cover or what we're doing or what you'd like to see us play, maybe hit us up on Twitter at Retcon Air. You can go to our Facebook page where we do the majority of the stuff that we do, Facebook/Retcon Air. You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, on iTunes, Apple Music. You can find us on Stitcher. You can find us on YouTube. You can probably search around and find us other places. Google Music, I think. It's hard to tell where we are, but we're all over the place wherever you listen to podcasts. And if the place that you're listening to this podcast has some kind of review metric, we would really appreciate it if you give us a positive review, give us a bunch of stars, give us a bunch of thumbs up, like, subscribe to the podcast, check out our show. We really appreciate you. We love you guys. Thank you for checking out Retcon Air. We will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.